Perfect. Welcome everyone to how to automate attendance check-in using smartphones as well as Google Drive. So before I jump right on in, I just want to kind of like give a little bit of like a kind of higher level structural planning tip in case like you're planning on implementing something like this. So if you're going to be implementing like an auto like check-in type thing for like an event, say like a guest speaker over in like campus center or something over at like the arena or anything like that, whoever is going to be putting together the check-in form on Google Drive, you're going to also want to designate them as the data manager for that, because whoever is going to be doing the auto check-in form, like setting that up, is also going to be like one of the same for the spreadsheet that's going to have all the information there. I put this out there because when I used to do this back then at the School of Business, I would get several emails from others wondering like who's got the data, who's got the check-in data, and we had to kind of establish a little bit of a system of sorts of like who would be like who has that data, so that way they can kind of like designate like who you can contact in order to get like a spreadsheet of like students that have checked in and all that stuff. So just a little bit of like kind of like a before you even jump into this thing, something to take a look into. So having said that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. I'm going to go ahead and share this. So what you're seeing right now is Google Drive. This is underneath my account for SUNY Oswego. When you go to create a check-in system, what I recommend doing is creating a new folder, so that way you can kind of like hold all the assets needed for your check-in event there. So for instance, underneath my drive, what I would do is I would create a new folder right up at the top left. And then for this one, I'll just call it launch it 2023 edition, just as kind of like an example for like a check-in event. And then I'll go ahead and click create. And I'll go inside here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is click new and then do a Google Forms. And that's going to create a new form inside that folder. So for this title, I'm just going to call it check-in form. And it's going to automatically update the title up over here, but I'm going to change this title over here to say launch it 2023 check-in form. And then for the description, a lot of times we've had this form set up because a lot of professors want to look into like perhaps giving like extra credit to students, so that way they can make sure that they attend like a business function like this. So we'll just call in, we'll just put here or extra credit. So it's up to you however you want to put the verbiage as well as the title up over here, but whatever you put up inside here is whatever the student or whoever the attendee is going to be doing is going to see right up over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this first question up over here to a short answer, and I'm just going to put down just name, and we're going to make this required. So the implication here is that a student is going to put their name inside this field. So that way, when they go to check in, they'll put down like, hey, I'm George Washington. And then that'll be like the name that they'll put down. And I'll put in another question here. Let's just say, who is your professor? And this will be with the implication that whoever the professor is that's sending them over to the event there that's giving them extra credit, they're going to put their name inside this text box over here. If you only have like 2 or 3 professors that are only given that within your department, you can also change this over to like a multiple choice type answer, or do like check boxes if it's multiple there. So it's up to you how you want to structure that. And then I'm just going to put down 2 more questions. One I'm going to put down is, what course are you taking? Which is going to be affiliated with kind of like the last question, the professor thing. So wherever they're going to be taking like extra credit from is where they're going to be, what they're going to be putting it inside an answer. So I'm also going to make those required. By the way, these first 3 questions, I've made these required. If you see this red dot right next to the question, that means that it's required in order to be able to actually submit the form. And finally, I'm going to submit one more question, but this one's going to be an optional one. So this is more of like kind of like a survey for like data type purposes afterwards. So like, for instance, launch it, since it's kind of like a business type function, business school event there, we're going to put down like an example question, like what type of business ideas you have, and then they can be able to optionally input whatever answer they want here, just as long as you make sure that this required part is not like actually checked. Otherwise, if you check this, then it's gonna not make it optional at all. But as long as it's unchecked, that'll be pretty good. I usually keep it to 3 to 4 questions, just so that way students, as they're like filing in inside whatever event they're using, can get up and easily put in their answers without having to like spend too long putting in their stuff. So once you've verified all the information or put the questioning that you want inside here, what I'm going to do next is go over to settings, just kind of verify some things here. So responses, we don't want to collect email addresses because this one is just going to cause, it's up to you if you do, but just know that if you collect email addresses, it's going to add like a little bit more complexity to the student, because they're going to have to like type out their full email address as well as like log into Google in order to be able to like actually authenticate that information. But on the other side of that coin, you'll be able to verify that it is a student that's actually logging in. So I usually keep that unchecked. And I also usually keep response editing unchecked, just so that way they don't keep on changing their information, and it's kind of like set as is. And this part here, require sign in, is somewhat important too. I usually keep this unchecked, so that way in terms of like getting the data in, as well as like getting students to their seats right faster there, it will be kind of like a little bit more faster and streamlined there. For presentation, it's up to you if you want to like show like a progress bar. I usually also uncheck this link to submit another response, so that way they don't have to like keep on, they don't have that ability to like check another person in unless you do want to keep that. So be mindful of that option. If you want to have that option to be able to like let them submit another response, that's up to you if you want to set it up as such. And pretty much those are like the main like settings you'll want to kind of set up there. So once you've verified your questioning and you're all set, what I usually do next is click send. And then I usually click the link over here so I can get a link over to the actual QR or actual form itself. I usually like to shorten it just so that way it's easier to like copy and paste. So I'll copy this. And because I'm using Chrome, there's an option up over here to let you generate a QR code right off the bat. So I'll click this and then click QR code. And then right here, I'll just paste that form URL inside the QR code area and then download that. And then that's downloaded it as a PNG file. So I'm going to go ahead and exit this one out. And what I'm going to do is preview this just to make sure that everything kind of looks okay. So if a student has like a phone or anything like that, what they'll do is with their camera phone, if they have an iPhone, they just need to open up the camera app on their phone and then look at that QR code, and they'll be able to directly have this form show up on their phone directly, so they can put in their name and all the information and all that fun stuff. And what I'm going to do, just kind of like populate that stuff, is put in my name, dummy data here. Go ahead and click submit, and they'll see like your response has been recorded. And so after the fact, once like you've gotten through your event and people have checked in and all that fun stuff, if you go back over to this form here, you can click this create spreadsheet icon here and then have it create a new spreadsheet. And then we'll give it a second. And it will create that spreadsheet for you within your folder event here. I'm going to refresh this so that way it actually shows up. So that way you'll be able to kind of go directly over to the spreadsheet and be able to pull like your attendance information directly from here. So I always recommend doing like a quick dry run as well, just to kind of make sure like data is coming up properly. And with that QR code that you just saw, so let me see if I can open it up inside. I might have to stop my screen as well as like reshare like the whole desktop. Hang on one second. Okay, pardon the mess a little bit here. So this is my downloads folder where that QR code that I just generated for the form came out. What you'll want to do is you'll want to print this QR code out onto like a piece of paper and have like that piece of paper say event check-in or event sign-in, and then post this piece of paper like near the entrance. Like for instance, if you're holding it inside the Sheldon Ballroom, like maybe have like 2 or 3 poster boards with like this QR code on the outside. Students will be able to scan it and then they'll be able to pull up that check-in form right away. And what I always like to usually do is I usually like to upload this QR code into the same folder as that event. So that way I have something to like kind of work off of as well. And that's pretty much all I got for the check-in form thing. So I'm open to any questions if anyone has.
Dan, I have a question. So I run a summer program where I have 100 students and there are 18 different events. Should I do a different QR code for each event? Because they get credits for going to each one of them.
Yes, if you're gonna do like separate events there, well, actually, let me back that up a bit. Are we talking like separate events for like different days, I take it?
Yes, different days and times.
I would recommend having a, if it's separate events with separate times, I do recommend doing a different QR code. So that way it will have like a separate data point that you can use to actually scan your, sorry, I started that off pretty wrong. I would just do separate QR codes so that way you have separate kind of like buckets or separate like data points for each event that you can kind of check in with.
Great. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Joey, I know that you have your calendar done so early though that you could do the drop-down box, how they suggested with the professors, with the dates and the event title as an alternative for having your data sorted.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, definitely don't just like take the short answer thing inside the form as kind of like a, oh, I must do it as a short answer thing. If you have like an immutable like selection list you want your students to select from there and like a drop down looks like it would make more sense, I would certainly look to that as an option as well for like your like automated check-in as well.
Thanks. So they have to come to the event to scan the QR code. They can't just go back to the QR code automatically and say, I'm going to check in for an event, but I'm going to, I don't know, play Xbox in my dorm residence hall room.
Yeah, but here's the thing too that you can also do in order to kind of mitigate on that. So when they check in, there's also going to be a timestamp. That timestamp is automatically going to get created no matter what. So that will kind of like be kind of like a kind of like evidence that they were there or not in some way, shape.
But once someone scans it, that becomes a URL that they can then post on a network. They can send out to all their friends. So it really doesn't guarantee, it guarantees that they checked in on the app at that time, but it doesn't say necessarily that they're going to be there. You know, a quick thing you could do is just to see if that's happening, you could just perhaps do a count to see if the number of people submitting it matches the number of people who actually attended, and then consider, you know, some other way of doing it if that happens. Students are pretty adept at these things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was wondering the same thing where it is totally goodwill. Is there a way to like encrypt or restrict the link from being shared?
So in that sense, when you generate that link from Google Drive, that's only for like your account that you kind of see that like image itself with there. So what we've done at the School of Business is, in order to kind of mitigate on like students like link sharing or anything like that, is we don't put up that QR code until like maybe like 5 to 10 minutes before the event starts there, where like everyone's kind of like congregated a bit. Although now with like social distancing, that might have to kind of be looked into a little bit more. But usually we put that QR code like shortly before the event happens. So that way we can be able to kind of check people in as they go. So that way they don't have it's kind of like more of an analog security, if you will, where it's kind of like hiding that like event URL, if anything, before anyone can.
But if students have Discord or Slack or group chats, you know, that's not going to be a barrier. And it may work. You know, most students tend to be honest most of the time, especially if it's very low stakes, but
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, if it's going to be like a guest speaker, an event coming up over there, this might be like a kind of better option in that sense. But it's more like you don't want to do this for like something that's like very high stakes there, where like you must like kind of enforce like some type of like accountability to like make sure that they're there. So this is just more so for like general like event nights there, where if you want to like get statistics on like who attended what there, like more so for like data type purposes, then you've got something to kind of go back off of. Usually professors offer them as extra credit just to kind of entice people to go, just so that way we have those data points there, like gives motivation so we can get data. Any other questions?
So is there a different program or different way you use for high stakes that students are required to attend, that is an electronic check-in method other than the paper and a pencil?
Unfortunately, I don't have a solution for that one at the moment right now. This is just more so just something that was like kind of like get up and gone type thing that we needed. Like this was kind of somewhat new-ish that was developed there. And in fact, this is probably open to like newer ideas, like newer ways to like kind of like make it more secure if it down the road, if anyone has ideas.
yeah, but even pencil and paper is not terribly secure if you've got a large group, because it's pretty easy to write other people's names. And I know I used to do that many years ago when my large classes were only like 150 or so. The number of people signing in was always greater than the number of people attending. And you could generally see the handwriting next to each other. They weren't very careful about trying to alter that. So,
yeah.
I absolutely love your QR idea. I don't know why I haven't thought about, right? We have like parents signing at the front desk using a QR code, and that is not their demographic. Makes sense for programming. The quickest, like besides pencil and paper idea I've been able to figure out is having a roster on an Excel. So I can just copy and paste their email, because that's what pulls for Laker Life attendance credit.
Yeah.
So it's saving writing, and it's like hey, welcome to the event. Got it that you're here. And I try and encourage my students to do that too. They usually do pencil and paper though. But I will keep thinking. I think, we're on to something here.
Oh yeah, I would call this version 1.0, if you will. Like as with any other type of product that's a version 1.0, there's always improvement as well as newer ideas that you can kind of augment and kind of take it and run with. All right, any other questions?
in terms of classes, one way of actually locking that down is if you are using, if you want to keep attendance in large classes, if you use iClicker, you could even restrict attendance to a GPS range so that students have to be within a certain distance of the actual classroom location. I didn't do that because I had so many people out with COVID or with, various other issues last semester, but it is a feasible way of doing it in a class, but it wouldn't work with an event of this sort.
All right, that's one way to look into it also, the geolocational range.
That's probably more than you need for most events.
Gotcha. Well, just in case if anyone else does have like any type of want any further ideas, like checking things or like more like example plot points for like the data form. I've put my email inside the chat in case if anyone wants to kind of like get some more ideas on that. So, and like I mentioned, I'm welcome to other newer like features or ideas that like if you guys are interested in like pioneering or like taking it and run on your own there, like any other ideas you guys might come up with to kind of augment this, I'll also be able to try and chip in as well. All righty. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks, Dan. This was good.
Thank you. Have a good morning, everyone. All right. I'll see you later, John.
Yep. Thanks a lot.